The future of gender equity is bright. The future of gender equity will celebrate, not just tolerate, diversity. The future of gender equity will take into consideration the historic disenfranchisement and marginalization of communities. The future of gender equity will fight for real equity, not just equality. The future of gender equity will be global, recognizing, like Dr. King said, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
The Smithsonian sparks discovery, exploration, curiosity, and a passion for knowledge.
There are so many venues and opportunities to reach people.
It's a place of rich potentials.
Inspiring generations of students to be innovators and lifelong learners. The work of Smithsonian Education can be found all over the world, in museums, classrooms, online, and in the community.
Museums help open up your eyes to learn and see things that you never think you'd see.
Well, we find the stories, and then we tell them, and then people recognize themselves in them, and then they come to the Smithsonian.
Every day, Smithsonian educators continue a legacy of learning.
I want to provide resources and programs to the kids who may never have any other opportunity to access this museum.
We really focus our evaluation work on understanding teachers and what happens in the classroom.
As the world around us grows and changes, Smithsonian Education has continued to develop innovative ways to share knowledge with as many people as possible.
We have to find new entry points for people to engage in museum experiences. And part of that means redefining what an exhibition or a collection or a museum is in general.
Smithsonian Education has given educators around the world the ability to bring the treasured resources of the Smithsonian to students far outside of Washington, D.C.
Because the museums are in Washington, D.C., a lot of us around the country don't realize the importance of the exhibitions and also the traveling exhibitions that come right to our neighborhoods.
America, 1846, an audacious idea to grow and broadcast more knowledge than the world had ever seen. With an eye to the future, that dream was the Smithsonian, your Smithsonian. Expanding the portrait of a people, revealing the building blocks of life, to discover new species and save those we already know. A knowledge powerhouse with purpose and a community mindset. Inspiring a new generation to learn from the past. Speak up, be civic, serve a nation. So that together we can step into the future with optimism. No dreams deferred.
Welcome to the first annual Smithsonian Educators Day Conference. My name is Dr. Monique Chisholm, and I am the Undersecretary for Education here at the Smithsonian. I am so glad to have you join us for this first inaugural event, and we have over 1,200 people who are joining us across the nation. So thank you for your participation today. I take every opportunity that I can to celebrate teachers, and we want to do that throughout our day with you today. But first, let me offer a land acknowledgement. We will be having sessions presented throughout the nation today. And we first want to start off by acknowledging the lands that we are presenting from. And so we gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. And we offer this for all of the places which our presentations are coming from today. I also want to take a moment to just thank all of the people who have been involved in planning for today's event. I first want to start off by thanking Smithsonian leadership, and particularly Secretary Lonnie Bunch, who has paved a way for this path for education at the Smithsonian, but also this event to happen today. I also want to offer my sincerest thanks to the Planning Committee, who is pictured here on this slide, for all of their hard work. They have been working for months to make sure that all of the odds and ends and pieces come together for this event. So my sincerest thanks. I also want to offer gratitude to our presenters and moderators and all of the people working behind the scenes to make this happen. And finally, a special thank you to our collaborator, the Council for Chief State School Officers, who's been working with us to make sure that we could elevate and present the National Teachers of the Year voices during our conference today. So thank you all. When I think about educators, I get so excited. I was a teacher for 8 years, and I have spent my entire professional career in education. So I may be a bit biased when I say that I don't think that there is any more important role than that of a teacher and educator. For me, accepting the title of educator or teacher carries significant responsibility. I have such respect and admiration for teachers and educators around the world who have chose year after year to continue their craft and to continue to serve students. You know, when you think about that educator that's affected or influenced your life, you remember that they helped you to discover, to dream, to believe, and find the best in yourself. And ultimately, what our teachers help us do is to help develop that potential so that we as a nation can fulfill our promise and our potential and become a better version of ourselves. So it is with my highest gratitude that I say thank you to all the teachers, educators, and practitioners here with us today. You know, the Smithsonian was founded on the idea of the increase and diffusion of knowledge. And if we could go to the next slide, please. James Smithson founded the Smithsonian for the increase and the diffusion of knowledge. And today, the Smithsonian is playing a critical role as one of the foremost organizations in the country. And Secretary Lonnie Bunch has articulated a very clear vision that repositions education at the core of the Smithsonian's purpose and focuses on engaging education systems nationwide to enrich a national culture of learning. And we're helping to start that here today. And next slide. We are celebrating 175 years of the Smithsonian. We are the world's largest museum, educator, and research complex. We have over 21 museums, many of which are pictured here today, pictured in this slide. We have 3 cultural centers, 7 research centers, a national zoo, and over 20 libraries. Not pictured, but also noteworthy and worthy of mentioning are the research centers that we have across the nation, across the world, one of which is our Tropical Research Institute in Panama. We also have an astrophysical observatory in Boston and a marine station in Florida. So in terms of content and resources and information to share, we have a plethora of things to offer. We will look to the future for the Smithsonian to focus on our impact and by maximizing our educational capabilities. We will really focus on being a relevant institution that speaks to contemporary issues and helps to reflect the country in a more holistic way. We are also committed to using technology to expand our reach and to be able to serve educators like you across the nation more effectively. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about the makeup of our team and then jump into an overview of the conference today. We have served about 9 million people. We have over 300 passionate educators here at the Smithsonian. We have served 7.3 million students with our K-8 science curriculum. And annually, almost every year, we have about 1,600 interns that join us in different units at the Smithsonian. And I'm proud to say that while schools were closed during COVID-19, all of our staff rallied to figure out how we could offer digital resources to support distance learning, which you'll hear some of that today. So let's jump into what we have in store for today. I am so excited. So we have organized the conference around 5 main themes. The first one is Spotlight on Educators. And during these sessions, you will have an opportunity to hear from teachers from across the nation on some of their promising practices, effective practices, and how they have used museums and cultural centers to integrate content into their classrooms. You'll also have a chance to hear during these sessions from many of our National Teachers of the Year from across the country. Here at the Smithsonian, we also want to tackle big issues. And so during the big issues sessions, it will highlight important issues such as equity and inclusion, cross-cultural dialogues, and also environmental conservation. So make sure to check out some of those. Often people want to know what goes on behind the scenes and have a sneak peek of upcoming exhibits. So the next 2 topic areas focus in on those areas. For a sneak peek, we're going to actually unpack some of our exhibits, like the Girlhood exhibit at the National American History Museum. And we're going to talk about how girlhood resources and tools can be embedded in your classroom. And then for behind the scenes, you'll have a chance to see some exhibits that are not open to the public yet, like our Futures exhibit at the American Industries Building, Arts and Industries Building. And finally, we wanted to introduce you to some of the people here at the Smithsonian. So you'll have an opportunity to meet some of our zoologists and some other great educators from across the institution. As I mentioned, one of the things that we want to focus on very intentionally is a conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And today we have done that in a number of ways. You'll have an opportunity to engage in conversations around civil intersections. We also have some sessions related to identifying barriers for diversity and inclusion, and then also integrating diversity and also thinking about racial identity for students. But I have to say that one session stood out to me as I was looking across this theme, and it was a session from Tulsa educators from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was so intrigued because the title of their session was, "We Have a Hard History and We Teach It," grappling with the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. So I actually had a chance to talk with their team, and I was even more excited. So I invited them to join me for this opening session to have a conversation, not so much about what they're going to do this afternoon during their breakout session, but more of a conversation about how do they approach teaching hard history. So I'd like to have asked for Amanda and Tamitra to join me on the screen now. And I'd like to take a minute to introduce them. So Amanda Sullivan is a social studies content manager for the Tulsa Public School District. She supports K-12 instruction, and she's also worked as an administrator and a principal. She has also been involved in writing curriculum and serves as a coach for teachers. And she was honored as the 2013 Colorado Teacher of the Year. I'm also happy to introduce Tamitra Jamison, who is a native Tulsan. She has a mission to educate youth, serve her community, promote diversity, And as an educator for almost 20 years, she has earned her master's degree in higher education and leadership and has committed to creating multicultural programming for her school district and communities. Tamitra is also a descendant of individuals who were involved in the 1921 race massacre. So please join me in welcoming both of them. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having us here.
Well, to start us off, I just want to make sure that we have the right context for the events that happened in 1921. So I'll start and then I'll ask you guys to fill in. But my understanding is that on May 31st and June 1st in 1921, there was a thriving African-American community in Tulsa called Greenwood. And what happened as a result of these events turned out to be the deadliest racial massacre in US history at the time. This was reflective of a number of race riots that were happening across the country after Reconstruction. But in Tulsa, this was unique because of the devastation. It's noted that there were probably at least 1,256 homes that were destroyed, along with churches, schools, businesses. And it's not known exactly how many people actually died, but it's estimated between 100 to 300 people. So do I have that context right? Is there anything that you would offer, Amanda or Tamitra?
That's pretty accurate. Yes, ma'am.
I think the only thing that I would add would be some people refer to Greenwood as Black Wall Street. So that might be the other name they're familiar with that area.
Yes, thank you. So in talking with both of you, I've heard you talk about this notion of a conspiracy of silence that surrounds the incident of 1921. Could you talk to me a little bit more about what that is?
Well, the conspiracy of silence is basically for about 80 years, Tulsans did not discuss the Tulsa Race Massacre. It was discussed within families. Some teachers did teach about it, but it did not become part of our state standards until 2002. And that was due to the Race Riot Commission report. And they brought along, hey, we need to teach this in our classrooms, but it was slowly coming through.
It's really important to note that there was a community effort to suppress what had happened. So mass graves were made with bodies from the Tulsa Race Massacre. They were thrown in the Arkansas River. There are missing government reports. There are missing newspapers. And through the 1970s, people who wanted to investigate the Tulsa Race Massacre had their lives threatened and their jobs threatened. So this really led to generations of Tulsans and Oklahomans never hearing about the Tulsa Race Massacre at all.
That is so interesting and not uncommon. But I do understand that around 2002, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
There was a commission that formed, the Race Riot Commission. And part of the outcome of that commission was a report that recommended that the state adopt standards that would require the teaching about the race massacre in schools. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you now have state required standards in grades 3 through 12 that require that you teach about the 1921 race massacre. Tell me a little bit about those standards and how they are structured, how you approach them, and how do you teach content to a third grader, but then also a 12th grader?
So the state standards that we have actually are for 2 high school history courses, and that would be Oklahoma history and US history. But you were correct in saying that we do teach the Tulsa Race Massacre for grades 3 through 12. And we take an interdisciplinary approach like we encourage all school districts to do. We teach the Tulsa Race Massacre in English, fine arts, and social studies classes. And Tamitra can definitely talk to you about how she approaches it in English classes.
Well, in English class, we use the narrative, the storytelling. One thing we were able to do is to use actual interviews from survivors throughout the years, especially currently with our last remaining 3 very, very known in the community now, of course. And we also like to integrate the arts into it. One thing I love about my group of teachers, I love them so much, we made sure to include arts, science, history, and English into one. And so having that hard history it is difficult, but when you foster a community of teachers loving on the kids and telling them you can learn about this and become better, that made the total difference for us.
Well, I love that. So, I'm going to pick up on a couple of things that both of you said. The kind of empathy around teaching that you just don't get from, your course sequence or the standards of the curriculum. It's a empathy and attitude about the teaching. And then the interdisciplinary nature, history, social studies. I heard you talk about arts, Tamitra, has really been something that supported that. Is there a framework or, something that grounds the way in which you approach the curriculum and the standards?
Absolutely. So Monique, or Dr. Chisholm, you had spoken earlier about how do we teach this in elementary school? And that's a really common question that we have. And we did approach that teaching using a framework on the Black Historical Consciousness framework. And I want to start off first by just kind of talking about the mindset that we are looking at when we're thinking about third graders. Our third graders are well aware that the world around them treats some people differently. And unfortunately, many third graders have experienced that themselves. And they can't necessarily articulate why, but they know that there are things around them that are unfair. Many third graders, many elementary students are aware of the murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And so knowing this, we approach elementary school in third grade by really knowing that before we talk about the Tulsa Race Massacre, we have to front load vocabulary and really think about how can we give third graders an example of what discrimination is and diversity is. So we introduce it with a cartoon called The Sneetches. And in the Sneetches, there are star-bellied Sneetches and non-star-bellied Sneetches, and they represent the idea of diversity. And unfortunately, the star-bellied Sneetches have more privileges, and students are really able to see how does that impact the community when some have privileges and others do not. And that really lays a groundwork for some of the next steps that we have, and we do a read aloud for children. In our 4th and 5th grade, we know that we need to explore the Tulsa Race Massacre, not focusing primarily on that event, but rather on Black agency and Black resilience. And that's part of the Black Historical Consciousness framework, is focusing on all of these beautiful things within Black history and culture. And that's what we do within our elementary lessons.
That is so helpful. And we'll share those resources. So they'll be available as part of the package that we post after the event. And you're getting a lot of support in the chat for the work that you're doing. So I just want to echo that. So I am a person who's pretty comfortable talking about race and racism and bias and privilege. But still, there's times when it's, uncomfortable and, it's just really difficult. So I'm wondering what kind of professional development you offer for teachers so that they can have these courageous conversations. And Tamitra, I might start with you.
Well, honestly, our professional development, we had a lot of built in through our units. For instance, I know Amanda worked with the social studies teachers before they even taught the units. And throughout the years, we have a lot of social emotional PD, just to really work with teachers. And then we also like to build a community. And so it's not just building a community within the teachers, but bringing our community within. And so we like to use those resources to help our teachers understand that hard history. Yes, it hurts, but if we don't understand that pain, how in the world can we give these little kids any room to grow? And so that's our focus.
That's beautiful.
Dr. Chisholm, I think you really spoke to what a lot of our professional learning is about. So we need through these lessons for our students to be able to talk about racism. So we front loaded this by giving teachers professional learning we called complicated conversations. And in it, we asked teachers to first look at themselves, to consider what they bring to their classroom, how their experiences and their worldview really impacts the instruction that they do. And if it's different from their students, how they can identify those differences and consider how they need to be very open and transparent with students. We also discussed how can teachers over the course of the year build the capacity of students to be able to talk about racism. So providing students with an opportunity to have multiple conversations and to reflect on how they did and to set some intention about what they can bring and how they can contribute in future lessons. And one last point that we really feel is important is to not leave our students broken, to not leave our students in a space where they have talked about really difficult things and have to leave a room or move and transition into another lesson without an opportunity to reflect and synthesize learning and calm down in case they've been really jolted by the information that they've heard. And so this is really a life skill, and our teachers need to hone some strategies in order to do that with their students.
It sounds like you guys have a lot that you could share with all of us on how to approach this and the strategies that you've used. I'm sure that some things that you've tried have worked, and maybe some have not been as successful, but they're learning steps nonetheless. We do have a question that's come in about how do you work with teachers that are resistant? And I might fold that into a bigger conversation. We have probably time for one more question. I could talk with you guys all day, but they do have a session this afternoon that you definitely want to check out. But let's think a little bit about how do you approach teachers who might be resistant. But I'd like to fold that also into parents and community members. I'm wondering kind of what is the reaction that you get from parents and community members in addition to teachers?
Well, I think that's probably my question. Well, first, we had a teacher, and I will use him as an example. He identified as, I am an older white gentleman. My family's been here for a while, and my family probably was part of the riot, of the massacre. How do I teach this to students without them feeling like I'm the enemy? And honestly, we had that conversation, and it took that moment to be open and honest with each other. We let him know that this is a safe space. You can always come to us, and really to tell him you're not teaching it in perspective of what just, the emotions part. You're also teaching about what actually happened. And so really just take it in. We have to make these kids better than our previous people. The second part was, I'm so forgot.
Right, yeah, about teachers who are resistant, but then also how do the community members and parents react to the content?
The community, I have longstanding in the community. I do a lot of community service, and honestly, many of our community, I see the question about student body, many of our community close by were intrigued and excited that we were able to teach it within the classroom finally, because for so many years, you only had selected teachers teaching it at selected schools. Now it's available for everyone. And so the curriculum is available not just for our Tulsa public schools, it's available nationwide. And so a lot of the community was open to it. Their biggest thing was make sure that you teach that we survived. And so one of our units talks about, especially the elementary level, of what Greenwood was and how it's still going. And then
I've heard both you and Amanda talk about the care of mindset, resiliency, persistence, survival, all of those things. And so I guess I'll just turn it to both of you to offer one last word as we think about, you're reaching about 1,200 educators across the nation. Is there any words of wisdom that you would offer from your experiences to help support them in teaching hard content in their classrooms? Amanda, I'll start with you.
I think first of all, we need to remember that our students have to be given the skills to talk about race and racism, and we need to provide them places to practice, and school needs to be a safe place to have those spaces to practice. If you're an administrator, please let your teachers know that they're protected. It's okay to talk about these topics, to provide them with resources and lesson plans that you have approved, provide them with the professional protection that they need in order to move forward.
And Tamitra?
My last words of wisdom would be to use your resources. we have so many of them now, which I'm very grateful for. You can use the Smithsonian, you can use the Greenwood Culture Center, and you can use those resources to help cultivate your lessons to really be part of your students' lives. I would definitely make sure it relates to your students, no matter the body of students. Once you get them hooked in, they will love to learn and it'll grow.
Well, thank you both so much. And thank you for being educators and teachers, but thank you mostly for being courageous leaders. And we look forward to your session this afternoon. I think it's at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. If you've already signed up for a session or you're not able to join, remember this will be recorded, so you'll have an opportunity to see it later. But I do want to go next to the resources that Tamitra mentioned. Having resources is so key. And I think that what they elevated in that last conversation was the importance of not teaching about emotion, but actually teaching about facts and history. And here at the Smithsonian, we can help you do that. In fact, we have an exhibit right now. It's called Power of Place, Riot and Resilience in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That is at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We are going to share a couple of resources with you in the chat so that you can check those out at a later time. But we have some tools and resources related to this topic that can support further exploration. One of the things that we work really hard to do is to support in the classroom instruction and time. And one of the ways that we have been able to do this is through a tool that we have here at the Smithsonian called the Learning Lab. And I wanted to take a little bit of our time this morning to talk about the Learning Lab and share with you some of its functionality. It's a free resource. And so I've asked my colleague to join us, Ashley Naranjo, and she will join right after a short video that we have about the Learning Lab.
As a teacher, I'm constantly searching for new ways to spark curiosity in my classroom. Ways to create meaningful experiences that make learning come alive. Through the Smithsonian Learning Lab, my students and I are able to tap into vast digital collections and resources. It's a toolkit that provides a completely different type of learning experience for my classroom. And it's just a click away. The Learning Lab includes millions of digital resources. I can search for just about any topic and discover the perfect hook with results ranging from photos, to articles, to videos, to artwork, and more. I can create unique learning experiences, bringing together resources that make sense for my students and personalize them with interactive online tools. It's easy to add content to a collection. I can add interactive hotspots to highlight elements I want my students to notice. I can create quizzes and assessments to check their understanding. And I can share these ideas with other teachers down the hall and across the country. Join the Smithsonian's education community today and create your own free account. Through the Smithsonian Learning Lab, the power of the Smithsonian exists in every classroom. The power to cultivate creative and curious learners. The Smithsonian is yours.
Thanks so much, Dr. Chisholm, for that warm welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much, Dr. Chisholm, for that warm welcome. Good morning, everyone. Throughout today's program, you'll see several examples of how Smithsonian Museum educators and teachers have used the Learning Lab to create dynamic and interactive learning experiences for student use. The tool not only brings together the content of the Smithsonian into your classroom, but it also allows educators to contextualize that content for use with their students using approaches that focus on skills like observation, interpretation, and perspective taking. Next slide. Object-based learning is something that museum educators use often in their teaching. It allows for the authentic integration of objects and inquiry to deepen student understanding. When faced with an artwork, object, or specimen, students of any age naturally generate a long list of questions. Whether digital versions of museum resources or objects you have right in your own classroom, those questions allow students to consider a wide range of perspectives, support their claims with evidence, and make connections to their own lives. For example, an object like this handwritten postcard from World War I shares a more relatable story, one individual to another, allowing for an empathetic response from students. Another example, like this 11-foot tall paper mache reimagined Statue of Liberty that served as a protest object in 2000 to fight for an increase in Florida farm workers' wages, might help students make connections to national symbols and how we expand upon their meanings. An artwork too can become much more than just a visual aid. It allows students to ask questions about what they notice, what they might conclude from those details, and generate additional questions they have well beyond the frame. It can help students think critically about contemporary issues. This portrait of Henrietta Lacks, oh, the one right before. There we go, perfect. This portrait of Henrietta Lacks, which is filled with symbolism, offers insights into her biography and her place within the history of medical ethics. This next monumental sculpture, made entirely out of recycled jerry cans, typically used to carry gasoline, helps us think a little bit about the use and overuse of natural resources and its impact on communities globally and across time. Similarly, scientific research and data from the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center in Edgewater, Maryland, can help students put themselves in the roles of scientists, mapping and analyzing shark movement in our oceans. The Learning Lab lets you find those resources and more, allowing you to curate your own collections with interactivity around them. Since its start in 2016, the lab has been constantly evolving. In addition to new tools and content, each day there are new published collections of resources from teachers across the country. Just last year, our partners at DC Public Schools used the lab to support teachers with resources aligned to their curriculum as the shift from in-person to online teaching happened. They used the lab as a showcase for student work in response to the pandemic through videos, artworks, PSAs. And this past summer, several teachers collaborated with museum educators to co-create collections around major units of study. In a session later today called Bringing the Art of Close Looking to Your Classroom, you'll hear from a teacher in Illinois, Yolanda Toney, who has participated in several Smithsonian professional development opportunities. She'll share how she's been inspired to use Smithsonian resources in her poetry and literature lessons, helping students make connections between visual narratives and expanding what we mean by text. In this example, she uses a captivating artwork from the Smithsonian American Art Museum called Electronic Superhighway by Nam-June Paik. She connects it to the novel The Westing Game and the lyrics of America the Beautiful, helping students conduct deep analysis of each and drawing together connections among the three works. What's amazing is that I've actually witnessed over my years as an educator now how a single resource like this can be used in such different ways through teacher creativity. I've watched as early learners think about place, maps, and boundaries, and how high school math students have thought about the conservation of this piece and calculating the lifespan of its parts, as many of the technologies in this work are now obsolete. I think what's so powerful too is that this is not just local DC teachers and students that are using Smithsonian digital resources. Teachers across the country are localizing and contextualizing contemporary events and connecting them to history by complementing the Smithsonian's collections. Many of the Smithsonian's affiliate museums have also integrated their collections too. I think you'll find the platform especially intuitive. As you navigate throughout the platform, there are just-in-time screen tips to offer suggestions of what next steps to take. And the team of educators and technologists behind the Smithsonian Learning Lab often offer regular office hours and professional development opportunities. There are over 300 educators like myself from across Smithsonian museums who can curate collections of resources on topics that are relevant to the classroom, with suggested notes on how to adapt their ideas for different settings. As we start this new school year, we look forward to seeing what you and your students create. Back to you, Monique.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And that was wonderful. I've only been here at the Smithsonian since June, but the Learning Lab was one of the first tools that I was introduced to, and I've been so excited about it ever since. And I know that it's a wonderful resource for teachers. So thank you for that quick walkthrough. I thought in the spirit of going back to school, we would do a little short quiz. So don't worry, you won't be graded. This is just a pass-fail. So my first question for the group is, I'm sure that you're all familiar that the Smithsonian is a wonderful place for field trips. But did you know that there is so much more to experience about the Smithsonian than a field trip? Let's go to the next slide. I was amazed to learn that there is a whole continuum of resources, from professional development that Ashley talked about, and after school activities. And then also we have these really cool online interactives and games for students. We have extensive opportunities for thinking about math and art and history. We also have a curriculum that's aligned to the next generation science standards. And if you just needed some posters for your classroom, we have teaching posters. So from everything from A to Z, we have a lot of tools here to support what you're doing in the classroom. Can we go to the next slide? As we moved into the pandemic, what we also noticed is that there were a number of students, millions of students across the nation, who actually did not have access to internet or a computer. And so we started to work on what we're calling high touch resources. These are resources that students can actually manipulate and engage with in person. And we've also then really ramped up our high tech resources. And again, thinking about interactives, we have virtual reality, podcasts, videocasts, and so we have a whole range of resources. Okay, next question. Did you know that Smithsonian educators work with school districts across the nation? So this was another misconception for me as I joined. So, Smithsonian museums and centers are primarily based in the DC area. So I was thinking like the span and the reach is primarily DC, Baltimore, Virginia, maybe Pennsylvania. But no, we're working with districts across the nation. We have a relationship with LA Unified School District, North Carolina. We also have opportunities that we're doing in Georgia and across the nation. So I wanted to show you just a quick video about our relationship and collaboration with the DC Public Schools, just as an example of the type of work that you can engage in with the Smithsonian and Smithsonian educators.
I am so pleased and proud of all that the partnership between the Smithsonian Institution and DC Public Schools has accomplished.
Through our partnership, DCPS educators are supported in creating real-world learning experiences for our students.
In a year of great difficulty, it's been a masterclass in the power of creative teamwork. Kindergartners took virtual field trips to the zoo. Students of all ages were empowered to reflect on their pandemic experiences.
How to prevent COVID-19.
To engage with each other and the world around them.
We're especially proud of the Living Through History cornerstone with the Smithsonian Learning Lab. This virtual project gave students an artistic and authentic opportunity to process their personal experience during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The DCPS partnership serves as a model for how Smithsonian Education aspires to reach every classroom in America, asking communities what they need and meeting them where they are, supporting teachers' professional development, providing resources, expertise, and knowledge at the click of a mouse, sparking curiosity, and inspiring generations of lifelong learners.
Thank you to the Smithsonian Institution team for your work with DCPS. I am excited to see how our students' learning will continue to be enriched in years to come.
It's been a pleasure to collaborate with our neighbors at DCPS, and we are excited to see where this partnership leads.
Wonderful. We are really excited about this collaboration with DCPS also, and our teachers from DC are also presenting later today, and they're talking about how they have leveraged Smithsonian resources for their classrooms and their curriculum. And so another session that you might want to check out, either live or recorded. But let me jump back into the quiz. The third question is related to science. So I was not aware of how many science resources we actually have here at the Smithsonian. I actually touched on a couple, but let me share a couple more. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have standards that are aligned to the next generation science standards for K-8 science curriculum. I really hope that you check out this resource. We're going to share a couple of links in the chat box. It's phenomenal, and I found it to be very engaging and helpful. And there are tons of resources that help to support that. I'm also really excited to say that our National Museum of Air and Space has created what is called STEM in 30. And they are web episodes that help to contextualize air and space topics, and also tell stories and provide interactives and activities. And so that's a really great series to also check out. Again, one of the things that we want to do is help to elevate diversity, equity, and inclusion in all that we do. So we have an intentional focus on having content and stories about women and girls in STEM. And so there are resources that are available for supporting those conversations and that integration also. So bottom line, lots of free resources. Please make sure to check some of these out. If we could go to the next slide, I'm also really excited to say that we have a number of bilingual resources, Spanish and English. And one example is the Q Digital. And this has actually grown out of a relationship with the National Museum of Natural History and our research center, our Tropical Research Center in Panama. And what they have done is really explored, and if we could go to the next slide, you'll see they have created 6 resources, 6 digital modules that are inquiry-based, focus on science, allow students to play, and also experience digital programming. And there's also things there for parents and resources for teachers. So if you're looking for bilingual science resources, please check out some of those examples. Okay. Our last quiz question. You guys are doing great. So did you know that the Smithsonian offers in-person and online professional learning for teachers? And I'm happy to say that I mentioned earlier that we have over 21 museums, research centers. They each offer customized professional learning in their content, but we also have, if we could go to the next slide, opportunities for teachers to engage in what we call edX courses. And we have 19 courses available and interdisciplinary content that are available for free for teachers to engage in. So This is just the beginning of the conversation. We're so excited for you to be here, but we really want you to reach back out to us. So please contact my office, the Office of the Undersecretary of Education, connect with any of your Smithsonian presenters, or just send an email that says, I'd like to have a conversation to learn more about what the possibilities are. We also will, don't want you to miss the 2 o'clock session. I'm not sure if it's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock now. I've had 2 different times, but with the Tulsa educators, it's in the agenda format. We have a hard history and we teach it. And want to mention that it's at 1 o'clock. Thank you. And also want to, if we could go to the next slide, really just celebrate that we will have an opportunity to hear directly from Secretary Lonnie Bunch and our 21 Teacher of the Year, Juliana Urtubey. And they're both phenomenal people, and they will have a conversation with me about thinking about education policy, what we've learned and what we can apply, and then also how do we really tackle some of those thorny issues in a meaningful way to improve outcomes for students. And so please join us at 3 o'clock. So you're about to launch into a very exciting day full of breakout sessions. We value your feedback. So in closing, thank you for participating. We're glad that you're here. We ask that you provide feedback to the survey for each session. You'll notice for this session, there's a button on your right-hand side that says survey. We would love for you to give us feedback about this session and each session that you attend. And then also just a reminder, if you can't get to everything, don't worry, because we are archiving and recording, and we'll have the recording and resources available for you. So have a wonderful conference.